The reading from Genesis was taken from the Message Bible. Many of you have that at home, I know. The original blessing. Of course, in the 1980s, Matthew Fox's work on original blessing caught the world's attention as he directed our thinking in some new ways. And we wanted to encourage ourselves with his insights and his lingering gift to us this morning. The creation. Of course, there are two creation stories, at least in Genesis alone. It's not that there's just one biblical creation story, but the one we read today is certainly a profound image in our sensibility, isn't it? The creating God, day by day. It is good. It is good. And then it is very good. And finally, a day of rest. A beautiful, ancient story telling us that we are made in the image and the likeness of God, which is not something we should ever get used to. That is our original blessing. There's another ancient story following in the 3rd chapter of Genesis that has been described as the fall, or something like that. Another ancient story seeking to explain if we were once in a garden, what happened? And we can come up with lots of our own stories of how far we are from the garden today. Or we could ask ourselves, how do we get back? How do we get back to the garden? How do we get back to any sense that we could be a blessing? Because there seems to be a lot of easy evidence that we have fallen and live in a sinful world. And yet, there is a niggling of doubt. What if this world was made to be good and beautiful? How can we get back to that? That sense that the divine is in everything. We had that beautiful image just before I spoke of those people paddling across a very calm sea, giving us time just to think again about that divinity of creation. How do we experience God? So often when you ask people about that, they think of images like that, of paddling or climbing or hiking or seeing children, whether they are related or not. How we experience God is usually in a relationship with creation, other people, our families. For some people, it has to be big, like it's the Grand Canyon or nothing. And so when you do go to the Grand Canyon, you do get a sense, don't you, of how spectacular that is. Or do you remember going the first time you saw the Rockies? When you go in that highway between Banff and Jasper and you look up, there's something there, isn't there? Something magical. And so we're asked by the writers of Genesis to think about original blessing, that when God made all of it, it was good. So what does it look like? What does it take for us to be a blessing? If that is true, that's what is the original hope. It is when you know that you have been a blessing, or you say to someone else, that was a blessing, you're talking about appreciation, love, that they have made a difference, that they have made an impact. More than that, though, from that Genesis reading, we get a sense of blessing is an interaction. It's a relational thing, isn't it? Could be you with yourself. We know that from Jesus' teaching. Love yourself. You and another person. You and our community, how important that is for us in church. And you in all of creation. It can be hard for us some days to actually hold on to that thought that we are good, let alone the fact that in that reading from Genesis, we are very good. How do we live into that sacred calling? Well, one of the things we have to talk about is where we've taken that reading and twisted it. So the doctrine of domination is one that has been a treasure for us through the years, because we've thought of creation as a blessing to us, not a relationship, but one way. It was here to bless us. Stewardship was always acknowledged, but it wasn't lived. So here's the challenge. Just as it was so important that people talk about the doctrines that they hoped the Pope would repudiate, even if they were hundreds of years old, so it's important for us to repudiate deeply in our core the thought that creation is here for us, but that to replace that then with a relationship, a mutuality. And so I brought out our old friend, St. Francis. Hundreds of years ago, of course, he began to teach that, and it never went away. But could it be more important at any time than for us as we work our way into the third millennium? Because St. Francis, and of course this is a fanciful image here, he called all of creation our brothers and sisters. You know that canticle. It's sung, it's read. But St. Francis said we can't separate ourselves from our brothers and sisters in creation. He taught that as a very important part of his ministry. You remember the reading, Sister Moon, Mother Earth. He saw our relationship with creation as family. Sister Moon, Brother Wind. You know perhaps the reading, or if not, it's very easily available. St. Francis said, God's fingerprints are in all parts of creation. All parts of creation then become siblings to us. And to use the language of Genesis, when we do that, it's very good. A deepest connection for us, the family in the very best sense of interconnection of faith. So God's invitation to us that we got to read together in that opening story from Genesis, that opening story is to invite us to be in partnership, in a family of creation, with all of those wonderful things that God made and said were good. They were not just good as in useful. That's the wrong interpretation. They are good as in holy. Holy. They are holy. They are good. So that is the value in creation. Not what it will do for us, but that we get to be part of a holy gift of God. So we light our candles of the four directions each Sunday to remind us of the gift that spills out and is everywhere. So creation spirituality, although it may be new, St. Francis would challenge us on that, is all about relationship. The mother tree, braiding sweetgrass, all the books that we're reading now that remind us of this sacred earth talk about it as a family relationship. And family relationships can be tricky, but they are, in fact, bedrock for us. And so we begin a time in late summer 2022 of being aware of this amazing gift from the Holy Spirit to walk into the mantle of seeking to live as very good creations of God. It is nerve-wracking for us to think that. It is amazing, isn't it? That we are invited to this adventure with God's sacred Spirit. We are invited to explore, to find new ways, to feel with Francis that we are in fact brother and sister to every part of creation, and to feel the warmth of the divine smile that says, yes, that is very good. May it be so for us.